Good evening, everyone, or good morning, in whichever part of the world you are. We are coming in again today to have a conversation which is disrupting status quo, coming together to explore. So, the people that you see on the screen are not just the people who are going to be participating. I want each and everyone who's actually going to be listening to us to come up with your comments, to come up with your questions, so that we can have this conversation. It's not about us telling you what's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. It's us asking you to actually come in and see what we can create together as a community. So, having said that, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Randive. I am part of the G100 Oneness and Wisdom group, part of the larger G100 amazing movement that is started off by Dr. Harbin Arora Rai. And I am today very fortunate to have some awesome people join me. We first have Dr. Natalie Forrest, who is our Germany country chair for G100 Oneness and Wisdom. Hi, Nat, how are you?
Well, I'm awesome and I'm excited about this group and that we have a gentleman in this group as well. So we're very diverse
Exactly,
and we're going to share
exactly.
everything.
We have Dr. Pauline Crawford, who is our global chair for authentic harmony and positive masculinity. So, welcome on board, Pauline. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's kind of early in the morning here on the west coast of America, but I am awake.
Good stuff. We have our gentleman, the amazing UAE, as I beg your pardon, USA, Denim partner for Authentic Harmony and Positive Masculinity joining us. Hi, Firoz. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine and honored to be with you, ladies.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. And we have the amazing Mary Claire Ebale, who is our country chair for G100 Oneness and Wisdom in the Cameroon. Hi, Marie. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Okay, so I thought we would actually talk about different strokes for different folks. What exactly does it mean? We've all heard this amazing, cliche, but what is it? And how do we apply this in our interactions at work, in business, in our personal lives, as well as in the business side of the thing? So all of us have a good amount of experience talking on these subjects. So I just want anyone to hop in and actually start off with what does different strokes to different folks actually mean for you? And how do you apply it in the area of your expertise?
Well, I'd like to hop in. I love the title, Jennifer, Different Strokes for Different Folks. I think it says a lot more than DEI, for instance. So I'm excited there. I think we need to, I love the idea of disrupting things. I think the value of difference is absolutely fabulous. Whereas I think we've been building a world where it says, oh no, difference is a problem. Whereas I don't see it as a problem. So I think it's all about exploring, even that lovely expression of different strokes. Actually, the idea of actually stroking each other, literally, but with words and deeds. I think that's a very magical thing to encourage people to do, because I think people have a resistance, oh my God, can I do that? And they become either bossy or scared. So that's a thought
Yes,
to start us off.
yes, that's true. What do you think,
Yeah.
Nat? What do you think about
Yeah,
it, Nat?
I love what Dr. Pauline just said, because to me, it also means different strokes also means how do we talk to somebody? How do we recognize somebody? How do we show somebody respect? And we're not all the same. So especially in the corporate world, when we want to recognize a person, everybody needs a different way to be recognized. And I think it means that we really need to take time to get to know our team members, the people we work for, the people who work with us. And I think it allows a very different atmosphere at work if we learn how to respect our similarities, differences, and how we all dance to a different tune.
Yeah.
I love that because I love dancing.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Firoz? Do you
Yes.
like dancing?
I'm terrible at that. But my career when I was actively working outside of the nonprofit space was in the corporate world in multiple countries. And, it doesn't take one to be super smart to realize that differences make us stronger, especially in the team environment that exists in most corporations, right? I have never done anything on my own that is unique, but working with others, we've done marvelous things together. And I think it's the differences amongst people, uh, especially where you're working with people from different environments, backgrounds, upbringings, and so on, that you certainly realize the importance of, one can call it cultural IQ, I guess, right? Not only understanding the power and the talent and the skills that different people, men and women, bring to solve big problems, but also people from different cultures and ethnic backgrounds and so on, because everybody has that level of uniqueness, which makes whatever we are trying to solve much more powerful to bring in those different perspectives. So I just wanted to add that to the mix, because I think we need to involve to be much more inclusive in what we're doing, not only from a gender perspective, but across the globe. We have so many
Exactly.
common problems to solve that's
Absolutely.
needed.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. I think that's true. And what about you, Marie? What is your take on different strokes?
I really like what you guys have been saying, because for me, differences is who we are. We are all unique uh, and different. My father used to say that um, as a human, you are one and diverse within yourself. And with others, it's also the same. We are different. And when we understand that, we realize how much value can come from being different oneself and being different from each others. And in the corporate world, difference is what make we grow. Difference is what make we thrive. So difference is what help us think differently, think otherwise, ask what if. So when we start to look at what is different from me to you, we can then understand what each one can bring on the table, and then we can put it together and make it in a harmonious way become one. And that's what I like with people and difference all around me at work or at home.
Yeah, it's very true, very true. And my take is like, and I truly believe the fact that we're all exceptionally unique, all of us, okay? And to try and put people in slots, as in we have to be like this, and this is the only way that we can be, is it's a bit outdated now, and I think it's antiquated. And we've got to start looking at how we've tried it, and we tried, and it worked a bit, and then after that, it started collapsing, and we all are seeing it all over the place. But the fact of the matter is that we have got to reconcile and recognize that if each one is different, what makes them different? And once we actually are able to do that, I think we will have a more conducive corporate structure. We will have a more amazing ability to welcome new ideas, because right now it's either my way or the highway.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we've got to disrupt that, because
Yes.
that is what is not allowing for anything new to show up. And that's why I believe that questions are a brilliant way of opening up the doors of different possibilities that we've never ever been able to explore or ever go into before.
Yeah.
So the thing is this, that each one of us are working in different areas. Okay, so we've got people who are working with individuals to help them to open up, to recognize the fact that we're different, and so are the people. Then we've got Pauline, who's a master at determining, you could be a different archetype. So we'll go into that. We've got Marie, who speaks to organizations and to individuals to wake them up and shake them up and say, you know what, this is how it is that you may be operating, but let's look into it. So I think the whole conversation is about becoming the invitation of a different possibility to exist, so we can co-create and navigate collectively, right? So, Natalie, I'd like to ask you, what are some of the things that you might do to help people to recognize that they're different, and how that difference actually has got a whole lot of their brilliance that can be brought to the table?
Whoa, that is a big question, as you know.
Loaded question.
Okay. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. And when I talk to individuals or corporations, as silly as it may sound, it really goes back to self-love and self-confidence, and going back to realizing, what are you passionate about? What are your ideas? And that you are, as I always say, you're a piece in a big puzzle. Therefore, if you think about a puzzle, you're unique. So there's only one of you, and that's why you're needed. And then, even though we're saying you're unique, you're needed, and you may be different, I really try to point out the similarities. Because to me, we too often focus on what makes us different. DEI and all of that says, well, you're from Cameroon and you're from Hamburg, therefore you're different. Well, there are people in Hamburg who are much more different from me than somebody from Cameroon. So looking at what actually are our similarities. We're all unique. That's a similarity. We all have our own talents. So we're similar in that. So now let's bring all of that together to create what we want more of. I think that's the approach that I take. And once you know who you are, you can better contribute. And it works in teams, it works for individuals, yes.
I think that leads us to an interesting thing that I heard Marie Claire say a couple of days back, when she says that it's not about us looking at only what makes you different, but it's also about, does your difference that you have seen when you are getting people to work for you within organizations,
yes,
do they have the same cultural onus to be able to contribute? So that is something that is really good. Marie, would you like to share a bit about that? And then I'm going on to Pauline.
So when we come together, in organization or as an organization, we are coming from different culture, and we are coming with different agendas. So there are people who came there to contribute to help you achieve the goal, the mission, the big vision you have for the project. There are people who are coming with you because it's part of their self-project, it's self-realization. There are people who will come because it's put bread on the table. There are people who will come because they need something that get them out of their home every day. So it's many agendas, and those people are coming from different culture. So when they come in your company, in your project, does your project or your company has culture? A culture that say here, this is who we are. Because as far as we are different, for us to work together in a harmonious way, we have to work, we have to see ourselves as one in a certain way. So our culture as an organization, who are we? And how do we operate to achieve our goal? And as an organization, if we fail to say who we are and who we want to be, what we are going to embody while we are working toward our goal, we will fail to make everyone put their differences on the table in order for us to achieve our goals. Because we will remain individuals, each one with with his culture, each one with his agendas. But if we succeed in helping them understand, and more than understand, commit and adhere to our culture, be
Okay, just a second, Marie. If
part
everyone
of
could,
this culture, it
Marie,
will be.
just okay, Marie. If everyone could just mute themselves that are not actually uh, speaking, because we can hear typing and we can also hear disturbance of messages going up. Sorry for
Yeah.
the
So
interruption.
that is
Yes, yes.
that is how I think differences serve us better. It's not that we will ignore that we are different when we talk about organization culture. It's that we say that is who you are, that is how we will operate, and in this frame, we will put your difference and we will recognize you as individual, as unique, as the extraordinary being you are, and all the potential we can come with in order for us to thrive as a company.
I have one question. How many companies are there that truly will recognize you for being extraordinary?
So,
Yes,
me as
you don't have
Marie
to answer.
Claire,
You don't have to
or
answer, Marie. You don't have to answer that. It's just that you are sometimes hired to be extraordinary, and then you are not allowed to be the extraordinary. Okay, so I'm just
absolutely.
I'm putting it out there because these are the kind of conversations I believe organizations need to hear. Okay, and we are here to actually change and shift the narrative of that. So thank you, Marie. Pauline, I'd like to come to you, and for us to be able to recognize or to actually work in harmony, which is what you love to talk about,
Yeah.
harmonious working together. Could you share with us what exactly is it that authentic harmony is, and how do we actually bring that into the corporate world? Is it even
Well, thank you
possible?
for asking, because I do think, what we've touched on here are some very interesting themes that come into what I call, the culture of authentic harmony, which could be situational in any country and anywhere in the world. So it may mean different things to different people, different strokes for different people, but essentially, if you think about harmony as music coming together, you can almost, if you watch groups talking and you turn the sound off, you'll be able to tell whether they were in harmony because they would be flowing together. It's almost like the dance that Natalie mentioned. But I think I've put a thought out there that uh, fighting for equality has actually divided men and women, and that if we look for harmony, we actually create a positive outcome. And if you turn that into a business bottom line or top line or wherever you want to put it, it actually will give you a much more sustainable growth. So we tap into, I love the, difference is also similarity. So we have to be understanding our similarity. And I mean, for me, a baseline is, we all breathe and therefore we're similar as human beings. If we stop breathing, we're dead. That's very similar. And it happens everywhere in the world. So I like to keep things simple because we make things terribly complicated. And also when we talk about culture and, coming into contact with many African nations, I come from Britain, I live in America, all sorts of different cultures. I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. We start being tuned in to different cultures. So for me, tuning in to difference and understanding similarity, it's also about purpose. So if our purpose is, as Marie-Claire said, our purpose is to understand the culture, then we have to listen when we bump into another culture. So men are one culture and women are another culture. And one of the things I've come across recently is in translating my book into French, which I would love to send you, Marie-Claire. It's not about translation, it's about interpretation.
Exactly.
And that's where the conversation is important. When we're around the table, what do we observe? How do we tune in? Do we say, oh, that's that angry man that I used to always get annoyed with, or it's that woman who irritates me? We come in with our biases. So trying to take away all the biases is understanding that we are different and finding a new narrative for how we explain those differences. Because we have a world which is half female, and yet women do not have joint custody of the world. And that's a fact. It's different in different cultures. But my feeling is that we can't get anywhere unless we really get into a conversation that makes a difference. And one of the things I want to put forward is that potentially we never absolutely understand anybody in our life, even those most close to us, but we can value them. So I want to put the word of value. So I value this man around the table, this woman, this older person, this younger person, this person of a different preference, this person, and actually be curious and intrigued. When I went to Malaysia, I had no idea what an Asian culture was. I went there, to be honest, on a whim. And it took me some time to get used to it. But I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a totally different view of the world. And that's what I want people to be, is curious, even if they're going into another building, into another department. How can we get together? How can we tune in? So for me, conversation is very different to communication. Conversation is not judging everything, but opening it up. And that's where we start finding magic. So I think understanding difference and similarities. I use archetypes because I think I'd like to keep things simple. I ask audiences, are men and women the same? Most audiences will say, of course they're not the same. Are all men the same? No. Are all women the same? No. So I bring a very simple, simultaneous equation. I like maths. We've got men who are more action man and some who are more thinker-feeler. So I use a ruler and a philosopher. And my dear friend Firoz is a wonderful philosopher. He's really intuitive and sensitive, and he understands women, whereas the ruler will actually be very action-oriented, but he can be very wise. And the women are magicians and sovereigns. And I'm just using a simple axis of masculine and feminine energy. And I won't go into more detail, but if we don't know who's at the table, all we need to do is to stop, listen, observe, tune in our heart, and just understand, is that going right for me or is that going not right for me? And one of the things I think we need to do is not try and fix everybody. Allow everybody to come to the table and be curious. If you hear something you don't like, you might say, well, that's a very interesting perspective. Full stop.
Full stop.
We get into arguments too quickly, I think.
Yeah, I think it also stems from us wanting to prove that we are right all the time.
Yes.
And there's no other way. And it's absolutely a crazy way of approaching situations, because you're never ever going to get into anything that is going to be half as valuable if you don't let your barriers down. I mean, it's really important. So, Firoz, what is your take on that? And how do you see differences or similarities working for or against situations? You have to unmute.
Let me quickly touch upon the question that you had asked about, which companies are perfect in terms of developing the kind of environment we're looking for. And I couldn't think of a company right away, but I can think of people that I worked with and worked for, and those who worked with me, who have brought the best out of me, and others who were like a damp cloth. And, I sort of withdrew and didn't contribute as much as I could have. So I think it comes down to the person rather than the company. And of course, a company with lots of people like that is much more powerful and much more accomplished, and it's performance is going to be greater. But in terms of how we work with each other, I think one has to know oneself much better. We are not all perfect. I'm not. And we must learn to listen. I have been lucky to be involved with lots of groups where people from all over the world, in a fairly technical environment, solving large problems, have come together either in a room or in a virtual environment. And I would very much admit that I was the least smart person of the group. And I learned so much from all of them. But they all had different backgrounds from different countries and different specializations and so on. And I think we need to all learn to look for that pluralism that we want societies to learn from each other at the individual level. We should look for the best that each person around us is able to offer, and emphasize that and reinforce that, because that's what encourages people to continue to do more of that kind of good stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people do that, but I tell myself often enough that I'm not doing it often enough with all the smart people that I work with. So I think we need to first change ourselves, and then be much more open to other people's ideas, realizing that the more smart minds that come to the table, and sometimes we don't even know who's the person with a smart mind, but they may end up by saying something very profound because of their experiences and their backgrounds. And so we need to applaud that and use that kind of information.
I think that is so amazingly put. Thank you for that, Firoz. Because as Pauline says earlier, that we have lost our curiosity. We actually think that we have all the answers and I'm going to come and fix everything. No, we're not. It's not working. We've tried that. I mean, I've been one of those. I'm going to come and I'm going to fix everything. I used to be one of those kind of people. Till I recognize the fact that, oh my God, do I need to have all the answers? No. Do I have all the answers? No. Am I willing and curious enough to find out who is it who can amplify what it is that we're trying to do here? Okay. And that is why bringing you guys together to actually talk about it is so amazing, because each one of us has got a different take on something that people can relate to. So if anyone is out there and is listening in, do you have any questions? We have these amazing people who are going to be able to contribute to you, your questions or whatever. So please feel free to join in, because we will actually show your questions on the stream, and then we'll try and answer them best for you. But the one thing that I'd like to say after listening to all of you amazing people is this, that the way that I have started working is like, what if I did not have all the answers? And if we can ask ourselves that question, if I didn't have all the answers, what else is out there? Okay, that's number one. The second thing is like, if we are looking at wanting to shift and change something, and what we have been doing for the longest time ever is not bringing us the results that we are looking for, then it is actually common sense to say, what's missing here? Okay. And when we can be vulnerable enough to actually say, okay, what's missing here? Then we go into, okay, who else will have an idea? Who else will be able to contribute to this? And that is what we have to be open to. My next question to everyone would be that if you're going to take this about being different and trying to be similar and bringing them, because quite honestly, it's the flip side of a coin. Different, similar, okay? Same coin, okay? Different sides. So what are we going to do to actually amplify the way that we approach differences, and how can we make those differences come into similarities, and how will that impact the world that we are living in, be it corporate, be it at home, be it anywhere? Feel free, whoever's ready to hop on and answer that.
I would like to jump in if I can, and I see Pauline wants to as well. And I'd like to put a little bit of a different twist on it. I'm not a medical doctor, but the way I understand our bodies, our physical bodies, is that all our cells are a little different, but they have a similarity, and they all come together and work together to make our body function. We see the same in nature. So there are different plants out there, but together they build the rainforest, or they make the water flow, and you have an ecosystem. And to me, we as human beings, therefore, can work the same way. We're different in some ways, but if we come together and work with our differences, our different talents, our different likes and dislikes, then we can actually create something very, very valuable. So I want to put that twist on it, and using what Pauline said earlier, judgment. Having studied psychology, we all judge all the time, period. The question is, what do we do with it, right? I mean, the minute that we see somebody, we go, or wow. We all have that reaction. It's an instinct in us. The question is, how do we help ourselves then use what Dr. Pauline said earlier, interest? Now, oh, you look different. Why is that? And Jennifer, you said the same thing, right? So, wow, I don't know this. What idea do you have? So I think that's much, much more valuable in that sense. Pauline?
Well, it is. And thank you, Dr. Natalie. I think one of the things that we're missing is that the future is very uncertain, and people don't like uncertainty. And when we come from a fear-based world, which is getting worse, and women have been marginalized, and there's a lot of evidence about what's been going wrong and right. But if we could imagine a future, which we don't know yet, but we imagine it at an ideal basis. So I was running some sessions about what would your ideal world look like, feel like, sound like, without any condition of the past. And then you reverse engineer from the future that you design here. Now, obviously, there's lots of things coming in like AI and hybrid working and so much, and then all the health stuff that we are learning so much more about, and then the news that we can't trust, and what's right and what's wrong. We need to get into those conversations, but having a conversation about the future is really interesting. The first time I did it with a group of women, every single woman said something different, and I was out there last, and I thought, I've got to say something different. That's a natural thing that women do. And I asked a male colleague, and he said, oh, if you had a group of men, they'd all say the same thing. They'd all build on the one before. I mean, that's not always the case, but there are some general things that are different. And I think what I love is the idea of positive masculinity as well, is really bringing men into the whole discussion about equality, because equality has always been something women have been striving for. Whereas I think if we all look for harmony, we can paint that future picture. And we do want a life that is healthy as well as wealthy. And I think that what you're talking about, Dr. Natalie, we need to address our own ability to be at the height of our best in the moment. And that's our first challenge. And then whether we take that into a business environment or a community environment or a family, is what value do we bring as a woman, as a man, as somebody older or younger from cultures? And if we could get everybody looking at that rather than judging, and I agree we do judge, but to pause the judgment and look at our experience. What do I experience here? Is it good or bad, or comme ci, comme ça? So that's what I teach when I'm talking with my clients. And what's interesting is they like it because it means they don't have to be in their ego, and they don't feel they have to be proving themselves. So maybe that's the shift we need, is to not prove ourselves, just to be.
Absolutely spot on, Pauline. And I have always maintained this is like, if there has to be any change in anything, be it culture, be it individually or business wise, it's about us not judging as number one. Number two is when you judge, then you need to justify what it is you're judging. And the third is with that justification, you've got to prove that you're right, thus making someone wrong. And then we're caught up in this conundrum, and it goes on and on and on. And our egos come in. And you're very true. And Natalie, when you talk about us being like in nature, like the rainforest, what's the difference between the rainforest and the different oceans coming together and merging? Is the human being, because you've got a mind, and the mind is causing all the havoc. So as I always like to tell people, can you take your mind and put it on the frigging shelf? To really wake up and shake up, to really recognize who you are, and drop the facades of who you think you've got to be. I mean, I've been there and I've done it.
Right.
I think all of us have, right? So the next thing is, Firoz, what would you like to add to something of that?
Well, I agree with everything you're saying, and all I can say is that a bit of humility would help us all. Most of us find very difficult to change our minds and tell ourselves, I was wrong on that one. I'm willing to change my opinion. We more often than not tend to be very dogmatic about our views, and it is difficult for most people to change. But I think that's what makes you a whole human being, that intellectual integrity, that yes, I am willing to listen to others, and I am willing to accept that what they're saying makes more sense than what I thought was the right way of looking at things. And I think we sometimes have to force ourselves to do that, but it is worth realizing that we all get misled by the way we hear things. I mean, we live in an age of so much, false narratives and misinformation and other things, and the background in which we grew up socially and so on, embeds those opinions. And there will be a time when you have to say, no, the world is different or can be different than what I thought it was. So I think that kind of willingness to change one's mind is important.
Yeah, and this thing that we keep talking about, mindset, it's actually putting the mind into a set. So you're going from one way of thinking into another way of thinking and setting that as the only way, the right way, the perfect way, which is what it is that we've got to allow ourselves to get out of our own way. That's what I keep telling people all the time. Right, well, what do you have to say? Sorry.
Well, one of the things I was thinking was mind flow. So if we could help people to flow to forward, is something that I think women do very well, because we're very fluid and we're very circular and very mindful of multiple things, and very complex. Whereas that mindset could be too set, but just getting people into that place of using their experience it's also a Gestalt technique, where you stay in your experience. And it's like making choices. I have people who say to me, "Oh, I can't make choices like you do." I say, "Well, by not making a choice, you're making a choice."
Exactly.
So, and the other thing I want to bring up is it's always very situational. I think, Marie Claire, you mentioned that, situational is certainly cultures are, and we know that in mergers and acquisitions, most often go wrong because cultures don't talk to each other. It's not the business that doesn't work, but the endemic cultures are not able to merge and synergize. So that's where we've got to be really mindful of the difference and the similarity at the same time. And women are very good at and. So I think making sure we have a joint custody world where we imagine and curious and take ourselves into a forward place, that's a conversation I love to have, because people, when you're talking about something they know a lot about, can get very judgmental about it.
And I think most of the time we are trying to maintain our point of view as the right one. Okay, and I think it is more of I mean, I've actually seen and interviewed and communicated with so many people who have got really powerful experiences and have actually, got degrees coming out of their years, and they're so much into education that sometimes education too becomes like a stumbling block because it does not allow you to think for yourself, literally. And I've seen that, and it's not how many accolades you have and how many things. We're talking about simplicity. When you're simple enough, and as Firoz says, vulnerable enough, and humble enough to actually observe that certain things are not working. And
Yes.
if it is that you have instigated that and you have started something off and it's not working, then it's also being humble enough to say, okay, it's not working. What else can I choose here? And as you say, Pauline, so perfectly, it's like not making a choice is a choice as well. Absolutely spot on. Marie, what do you have to say about that? How do you relate that to the training and development that you do within the organizations and people that you work with?
Can you repeat the question?
I said, how would you actually apply what it is we're talking about? I know that you do in the with the people that you train and facilitate.
So there are different things I do, but one thing I like to do is, um, I think what we start with in accepting and allowing others to be different is by accepting ourselves.
Mm,
Because when we are fighting with who we are, we tend to fight with who others are. And when we accept who we are, we accept that we are not perfect. We accept that we don't have all the answers. We accept that we don't have all the solutions. We accept that we are vulnerable, and we allow ourselves to be all that. And when we allow ourselves to be all that, that is not so sexy. We allow others to be that um, uh, also. So that is one of the
the
first
first
step I
first thing.
take. I take with people
Mm.
who are willing, because that we cannot force anyone to open up and say, I am going to accept the difference and allow anyone to be uh, himself. No. You work with people who are willing to walk this way, because it's not force. It's people who are willing to open themselves to this philosophy, I will say, or this way of living or being. So self acceptance, others acceptance. That's the way it works.
The starting point for anything to change is to be an allowance of yourself and that of everyone else. Good point. But the thing is, over here, we have people from enterprise who have said, what an interesting topic. So, whoever the person is, would you like to actually communicate as to what you find interesting about this topic? I would love to hear. Is it one of us who is posting that as part of our groups, perhaps?
Perhaps.
Uh, We've got we've also got Perfect Health and Bright Business, who is from your wing, which is really cool.
Yes, that's great to see, Elaine.
So my question is, do we have anyone who would like to ask our amazing panel over here any questions? Um, And if so, please do send them through. Any comments that you have that we can all learn from. And the person says that they're from Portugal. So thank you for joining us from Portugal. Appreciate your presence here. Thank you. My next question to everyone is, can each one of you give me a tool that we can use immediately, like Marie has already done, is allowance and acceptance. Can each one of you share another tool, another way of thinking that will perhaps make it possible for us to acknowledge that there are people who are different cultures, different religions, different whatever, and how can we actually bring people into being more one? How do we do that? Because everyone is talking about it and giving their own theories, but it's about having different strokes for different folks that I'm looking for over here.
Well, I'd like to suggest the idea of magical conversations, because it's actually got 3 rules. The first one is no judgment, which we've talked about. But the second is no anger. And the third is no coercion. And the setting is actually, and I've done this with many clients across the world, and you can do it. You set the time. So you say it's a 90-minute conversation about a topic. It could be in a corporate world, could be leadership, collaboration, client service, a nitty-gritty subject, but it could be something challenging like toxic behavior, could be about culture. But the issue is that everybody is committed to not judging in that space and time. So they have to say, in my experience of this topic, X, Y, and Z, and that listening process. And what's interesting is you don't get anybody to introduce themselves. You sit in the room as I sit there as Pauline. If the boss is there or the bellboy is there, they're sitting there the same. And it's that engagement of no judgment by looking at experience and just listening and not looking for action. So that's the other part, is we get so quick to say, what's the KPI, what's the action? But you actually allow that space. And it's amazing how people grow, and they may not even say something for the whole 90 minutes, but they're there feeling part of it. So belonging to that circle of trust and contribution is vital. It slowly grows as you have more and more of these, and people feel really able to share their innermost fears, because fear is what's stopping everything going forward.
And what's the acronym for fear? False evidence appearing real.
That's
Isn't
right.
That weird?
And I've run these circles, and people say to me, what happens if somebody gets angry? I said, well, the minute they get too angry, the magical conversation stops. So it's easy. You invite them to stay or go, but they need to follow the rules. That's
exactly. Cool. I like the idea. I've been on one of those magical conversations with you, and I think it's absolutely amazing to experience something. So I'm informing everyone, if you haven't actually connected with Pauline with one of her magical conversations, might be a good idea to actually pursue that. Absolutely. No judgment, no designations, no nothing. Just be there as you, authentically, yes, and be vulnerable enough to actually receive everything without a judgment, literally. Yes. I mean, yes, we need to actually communicate. So, Firoz, what do you think about something of that sort?
Well, it's something that I did when I was in the corporate world, which worked sometimes, but didn't always work, but it was useful. I used to make a list of the 5 people in my work environment and beyond who I don't always so eye to eye. You know, we had differences of opinions or approaches and so on. And I tried in most cases to reach out to each of them individually and said, let's get together because I value your opinion and I want to learn more in terms of how you're thinking about topic X or whatever it was, your approach and your style and so on. And, you know, that allows people to drop their guard and become a bit more open and forthright and honest in terms of expressing themselves. I think it works both ways, so you have to do the same with them. To really break down the kinds of barriers that are artificial in many ways or misunderstandings. It ties in with this whole idea of the fact that, you know, if what you are saying makes sense to me, I'm willing to change my mind concept. And if people feel that you are there to really hear them out and not talk past them, I think you will establish a stronger relationship. And in everything in life, in the corporate world, at home, in the community, it's all about the right way to connect with people and establish relationships, because that's how, you know, we start caring for each other and looking after each other better.
I
So
think that's true. Do you see any advances in the way that you have brought that when you were in the corporate world? Do you see it becoming more apparent now, or would you see it as going down?
I think it must vary by different environments. You
Where do you
know,
see it most? Where do you see people as being
well, I've
humble
been
enough?
sort of out of the corporate world for quite a few years now, so I'm spending most of my time in the nonprofit space as a volunteer and so on.
Okay, all right.
And I think what drives that environment, and I'm sure it drives the corporate environment also, is when a group of people come together. Normally, they're there to achieve some common good, whether it's a project or some marketing project or improving a community or helping out, you know, marginalized people and so on in various areas. And so I think most people realize that, and it's, to me, becoming more apparent. I see that happening more and more. People are realizing that we can become a more potent force for creating positive change if we include more people, if we embrace more ideas and differences, which means the larger the network of people that you consult as you're trying to do things and bring them into the discussion, give them a voice, I think improves the outcome of whatever that you're trying to achieve as a group. Just as we are trying to do with G100. I mean, we're a movement, and I think the more inclusive we can be, for example, I'm the only male on this call, but I hope one day there will be men invited, because after all, they've been, as I've said before, the gatekeepers in the past. They've imposed some of the restrictions that have held women back. And I think we need to bring them into the fold and make them part of the change.
Totally.
Right? And we live in a world, if going back to the corporate world, where I don't think that part of business has experienced a kind of continuous disruptive change that is occurring right now. Yes, we've had that along the way, but the pace of change is so dramatic, and the new technologies that are coming on board and new behaviors that people are exhibiting and so on, right? And so that gives us even more reason to include all the important stakeholders in our deliberations, right? As we try and say, how do we cope with this thing? How do we change? And only by coming together can we become a powerful force for the kind of positive change that the world needs. So, you know, Pauline said I was a philosopher. I wasn't always like a philosopher. I was a person of action once, and I'm probably over philosophizing. But I think that's where we need to spend more time on those kinds of soft issues, so that people will feel that they are being included in the conversation. They have a voice. They can express their opinions. And I will tell you, people, once they open up, can be very, very powerful in terms of their contributions for the common good.
We have some of our amazing G100 Oneness and Wisdom champions who are commenting. Tanya Mattock says, what a great question, Pauline. We have Eva from Angola who says she's into the inclusion project, and inclusion, of course, is always on her agenda. So thank you for your comments. Marie, back to you. Do you have anything to share? And we can actually go on with this conversation. It's such a large topic to cover. And before I go on to Marie, Firoz, thank you very much for pointing out that we have only one male. I'm vulnerable enough to say that I'm going to change that. Thank you for that suggestion. Thank you very much. Marie.
Yes.
What do you want to add to that?
I really like what Firoz said, because we said we see that depending on the sector we are, people can be more open about some ways to things or some way to work together. Like you, I have been working in a non-profit world for, I will say, 9 years now. And what I observe is that people in this area are really more open about inclusion, differences, bringing different people together in order to achieve one goal for greater impact or for common good. So it's not that all the people who are open-minded are in the non-profit area. No, it's just that they are in this area, they are willing to work together, and they are willing to work with people who agree to come on in this area and bring their contribution in order for them to achieve whatever they are working on. And
Good.
I think that each industry can benefit for that, can benefit of this way of thinking, that will allow us to have more people feeling safe enough to share their voice, to let
Voice,
their
exactly.
voice out,
Mhm.
feeling valued enough to say, I think that if we do that this way, it can bring more value. When people feel safe, feel seen, feel valued, they are willing to give their best. And that is what many company doesn't know, does not know how to do. People think that when you come in the company, they pay you your salary at the end of the month and you work. But that is not how it works. That is
True.
not how
Very
it.
true. I'm a bit concerned about time. We've got 2 minutes till 1 hour, and I just wanted to give a summary of what it is that we've actually shared today. And what I got from Pauline was that we've got to stop operating from a place of judgment and be a little bit more open to having conversations that are going to make people feel comfortable to truly be authentic about what it is, who they are, and what they say. I love what Natalie shared in that if we can all try and be more like nature, more like the rainforest, where we are so unique and different, and yet we come together to create that amazing rainforest. What can we learn from nature? For Marie, I learned, and thank you for sharing that, is that if everyone is unique and different, what is it that they're different with? What is it that they have as similarities? And what can we bring to congregate to create something that is going to be powerful enough while giving people a chance to have a voice and to truly say what is on their mind? The Firoz, Thank you for sharing what you did, in that even if you're not in the corporate world right now, you have shared such amazing pearls of wisdom where, first and foremost, I have to make sure that I have more men on the call. Thank you for that. You see, we've got to be vulnerable enough to say that. You see, I just did that. It's
Good.
not that difficult, right? And the amazing part about being humble and being vulnerable is one way that we can actually all grow together as a people. And I'd like to add something as is to be able to come into that zone of vulnerability and allowance. It's extremely necessary, as Natalie and myself have shared in the past, is to really get to know who you are and what turns you on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do not know who you are, and Pauline as well, with her archetypes, unless you don't know who you are, and actually Marie too, if you do not know who you are, how on earth are you going to be able to contribute to anyone else? So having said that, I'm mindful of the time. We've passed the hour. I'd like to personally thank Natalie, Pauline, Firoz, and Marie for sharing your time with us and your brilliance. And I hope this conversation has made a difference to anyone who's listened to it, who's going to listen to it in the future. Please reach out to us with topics that you would like to hear about. And this conversation is about disrupting status quo. We are not here to find fault. We are not here to fix anybody. We are here to explore different possibilities that will help us as humanity to grow. So having said that, good night, everyone, and thank you for being here. God bless.